Hey, East Albemarle, this is Eric, in case you couldn't tell. I am here to kind of kick off our next wave of professional development from our work at home status. And we're going to be focusing on something and have some reading for you to take care of related to the Daily Five. Some of you may have heard of the Daily Five. However, at East, we're going to be looking at more of a Daily Four. Before Judith gets into the nitty gritty of Daily 4 and what that's going to look like here at East and how that can support our classrooms and our students, I wanted to touch base just on some background information. I know when we last met as a staff in March face to face, I had talked about that a lot of our curricular and instructional expectations have been rolled out this year as we focused on getting stronger at core instruction. And Daily 4 is not a new program. It's nothing that's going to be different than what we've been asking you to do. It's just kind of formalizing the whole process under a name and a heading. So some of the things that we worked on this current school year for 1920, you see we're just rolling forwards into 2021. We've linked here the East Collaborative Planning Expectations. Those are our current planning expectations. We will meet with Stokes and we will update those as we get closer to summer or sometime early in summer once we get our schedule and all of the other dominoes aligned correctly. So if you do open that link on the PowerPoint slides, you'll notice that it's exactly the same document we've been working with up to this point. There's nothing new there. You can see as you read through the rest of these bullet points, we're not changing directions. We're not changing what we're asking you to look for information from. We're still going to use the North Carolina Standard Course of Study. We're going to use the curriculum guides that are created at the county level. We're going to continue to focus on unpacking standards, looking at our assessments, making sure that our instruction and the resources we choose align to the assessments that we're giving. All of these things we've been working on this year. This is nothing new. One thing that will be a little bit new is kind of talking about understanding by design. That is not something that we're expecting people to come in and start being able to do, but it's really looking at what is the end result that we want students to be able to do and then planning backwards. How do we get them to that point? So we'll be talking about that. And I think the Daily 4 model will help us achieve that with students and see their understanding come to fruition much sooner with intention. And then really, we're going to implement the Daily 5 for those of you that are familiar with that, but we're going to minimize that to the Daily 4 here at East in literacy and math. This should allow us to use the structured core content times with intention and with purpose, with the ability to differentiate for small groups much easier, our intervention and enrichment groups to be seen and met with at the frequency they should be met with, and then also giving kids that independent time. I know we try to keep you guys up to date as we find out information. Beginning of year assessment, I think we all know at this point, I've shared out that school will start a week earlier for students on August 17th. There will be beginning of year assessments if we are back on campus. If we're doing remote or virtual learning, I'm not sure what that will look like. But as of today, the last news that we had during our elementary meeting yesterday is that our assessment windows are going to look the same. One new assessment that will be happening this coming school year if we're on campus is reading assessment for fourth grade students, since Read to Achieve has been kind of waived for the past year. They still want to get a measure on students' reading level who would be leaving third grade or who were formerly third graders. That will be given in the first 10 days. I do believe it is an end of third grade type of an assessment. It is not like the BOG, where that was a beginning of third grade assessment given at the beginning of the year, but really assessing them on what they could maybe do by the end of the year. This will be, I think, an assessment that aligns with what expectations would be at the end of third grade for our students who have just started fourth grade. iStation, we're not really sure what's going on with our reading assessment platform. We know that the contract has run out at the state level. I know a lot of people are pushing for M-Class to come back. I think if I had to give my vote, I would probably choose M-Class as well. However, there is no news on this. They are looking at alternative instruments for this. So as of right now, we're not sure what K-3 reading assessments will look like, but we know there will be something. By law, there has to be. iReady will continue to use as our diagnostic tool for fourth and fifth grade reading. We'll also use iReady for our first through fifth grade math from the beginning of the year through the end of the year. Now, knowing that kindergarten uses iReady starting at the middle of the year, that doesn't really help us too much when we're looking at trying to create intervention groups. So we will be giving here at East specifically DPI's middle of the year kindergarten math assessment that they release to all of our kindergartners at the beginning of the year so that we have data. And then when we get to the middle of the year, as we start iReady with them, we'll also give them this assessment again so that we can compare those measures to gauge our instruction and whether or not students are moving in the direction we need them to move and at the rate that we need them to move. I know one thing that's going to be contingent upon the success of being able to do all of this and really kind of look at that daily 4 type of a model for literacy and for math is the master schedule. We have a lot of text on this slide. Simply, I think we're pretty happy, school-wide with the chunks of time that we can find in our master schedule currently. I know we have a grade level or two where it's a little bit choppier in the middle of the day. That's going to happen at some point just because of all the recess and the lunch times, and then the way our AMP schedule tries to accommodate that. So I can promise there's not going to be significant changes to the master schedule. Your PLC chunks of time as far as 90 minutes will look the same. We'll still have the additional 45 minutes on the 4 other days of the week. One thing that may change as we're looking at the chunks of time, grade levels may change their AMP times. There may be some shifts with that. Right now, we're not adding any teacher positions. If our class sizes, continue to maybe grow, there's always that possibility. So that always alters a master schedule a little bit. But with knowing that we have, a number of regular every day of the week AMP offerings for our students, we can accommodate, our largest class size or grade level size right now, which is 3. That makes things a lot easier to schedule for and to plan for. So our master schedule, I know that's always the first thing everybody wants to know before they come back. As soon as we adjust that and modify that, we'll push it out there. It's not a secret, but I can promise you it's going to look probably pretty similar to what we're working with currently. We will probably shift some instructional blocks. I know everybody wants to teach reading first part of the day. We're not going to be able to do that K-5 because we need to be allow Douglas opportunities to be able to support students who have goals in those different content areas across the school, as well as for Mr. Lattimore with some of his students that we're starting to push into classrooms. So, the start of the day will look the same, morning meetings and all that fun stuff, to kind of get everybody off on the same foot. Letterland in our, K3 classrooms usually comes right there first thing following that. So we try to protect that time. But after that, there may just be some slight shifting of what grade level falls where. And the last piece that I want to just bring mention to just show you how all the little pieces that we were building this year are going to tie together as we move into next year. There's nothing new on this screen. Talks about our MTSS framework and our process to support tier 2 and tier 3 instruction. We've already built, I think, a pretty strong MTSS framework and process relative to a lot of the other schools in Stanley County. Now it's going to be time for us to really put that into play. So one thing that will probably increase as we go into next year is our Friday MTSS meetings with kind of a 6-week rotation where we're meeting with grade levels to discuss kids, talk about kids now that Judith and I both have a better understanding of what where our kids are at, what they can do, where they maybe need support. Douglas has, pretty much a good year now under her belt, serving in the role that she has. Ms. Barbie's, got relationships with the students that we need to be focusing on with some of the behavioral things. So I think we'll be able to really refine this process and better support each of you in the classroom through MTSS. But really, Daily 4 will help us because we're going to be able to take our most recent data points on students, and I understand that March, when they last had face-to-face instruction, is going to be a significant gap between when we actually come back to school. But we're going to use those data points, and we are going to start intervening early and often with students. We're probably looking at starting that within the 2nd week of school. I know we're not going to see a delay, as significant of a delay as we've seen in the past with EC services starting, and we're going to start getting these kids the support that they need, which will allow you in the classroom to be able to focus on, the students that you need to be focusing on as well. Daily 4 will help with this because we're going to be able to look at structured blocks or chunks of time in literacy and then structured chunks of time in math that will open up avenues for possibly flexing kids across a grade level so that your classroom doesn't have a multitude of ability levels in it, but maybe, students that are all hovering around the same area, if they're lower, or maybe they're kind of in the middle, more like bubble students, or if they're more enrichment students. So we'll be able to be much more flexible and responsive to the needs of each classroom through this process. So at this point, that's going to kind of end the little bit of the introductory video here. I know Judith is going to make our next video here that's going to really break down the Daily 5 and really the Daily 4 here for East. And that you'll see that a lot of what she's going to talk about is going to support our PBIS components that we've added this year, so that everything should work well together and complement each other, and we're not, pushing, creating friction where friction doesn't need to be created. So as you go through this process and you're reading some of this PD that we're putting out there, if you have questions, don't hesitate to ask. Ms. Stokes, Ms. Warrant, myself, all of us are very familiar with Daily 5. We probably have some staff members who come from other places that are used to Daily 5. It's not something that should be scary, and I know Judith is going to do a great job of rolling that out to you here next. So thanks for your time, and look forward to the second video.